Hi guys, we're continuing on with our third part in the Unmanageable event, Stress and Crisis mini-series. Here for Sojourn Psychology, I'm Tara Boothby. I think you've seen me on our blog a time or two, maybe. So keeping in line with the question-orientated activity we did for the stress segment, we're going to go through a process of questions and just evaluation, some ways to get ourselves thinking about the crisis so that we can gain some momentum and power over what feels very unmanageable. If you want to pause and grab paper, go right ahead. So the first thing that we want to evaluate is, what are the 5 themes about the current crisis that are most distressing to you? Now, our current crisis, we have something in common right now, is just the global crisis. So if we're considering that specifically, there might be easy, grand, overarching themes, or maybe some sub-themes. So like the global economy, the COVID pandemic, American politics, so Canadian politics, politics in general. Then there could be some other things like family, or our children. Maybe you have a personal crisis, a health issue that is also going on for you right now, that is addition to or much more distressing because of how our society is limited in its functioning. Whatever those 5 themes are for you, just take as long as you need to really notice those top 5 themes. And as we're being aware of those themes, then we can also just notice how that has influenced our ability to make good decisions. What are the negative thoughts or feelings that are being associated with these themes? And what are maybe some of the negative coping strategies that we've been using? Common things that I'm hearing, and I'm sure you're hearing, of negative coping stances right now would be food, alcohol, overspending online, misuse or exaggerated use of our electronic devices. Some people are really withdrawing even further than usual. So there's some examples of maybe some negative ways of coping that might be going on for any of us due to these themes, crisis themes. So when we're considering crisis, we're considering stress and unmanageable decisions. One of the best pieces of advice is to go one day at a time. We want to keep things really simple and condensed in a real manageable and measurable way. Going one day at a time when we're doing very poorly is great advice. And so just for today, what can you say to yourself to keep yourself focused on making positive decisions? What statement can you say to yourself to ease the pain and discomfort that comes up for you when you notice any one of your crisis themes? My 2 basic questions that I go to when my anxiety gets off the hook is, number 1, what is going on for me just right now? And number 2, what can I do to feel better? Now, I might think of inappropriate coping stances like eating a liter of ice cream. But if I am noticing the pain and discomfort and I'm asking myself that question, what can I do to feel better? I might come up with some, colorful ideas, but I also am slowing myself down enough to come up with some other ideas like meditate, have a cup of coffee and just slow down, take an hour off of all of the tasks I'm trying to do and rest, write a to-do list. All these other ideas that can help us to feel like we're a part of the solution. And feeling like we're part of the solution when we're facing crisis is actually super important. So I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves, and do try to get some sun. Summer's going to be over sooner than we notice, and that's something else that's really, really good for our stress, our experience of crisis, our emotional well-being. Bye. Well, hello, it's Tara from Sojourn Psychology, and today I'm going to start a 3-part series on how events become unmanageable in our lives, crisis, and stress. So when we're considering how events become unmanageable or hook us into our feelings and our negative behavior, it's really obvious that the first place that the whole cycle starts is just with the event. And when we're trying to understand this so that we can make better decisions going forward, a real simple question is, and even if you have a piece of paper, you could just write down the word event and ask ourselves, what happened? So we want to get a clear image or sense of where did everything start to unravel, whether that was today or last week or a couple weeks ago, and I just haven't been paying attention to myself and it's been throwing me off for quite a while now. Once we've established what the actual event is, then we start to try and make sense of what is the next step, which is really what is the thinking and the feeling that is going on for me. So when whatever's happened, what is it that I say to myself? What are my fears that show up? What are my emotions that get really, really big? So I might say something to myself like, there I go again, I'm failing, or people always leave, or, oh, I just don't understand why people would say something like that. And then there's usually some emotional intensity behind those words that I'm saying to myself, be it anger, betrayal, fear. Usually it's more of a harder emotion when we first start to unpack with that belief statement. That belief statement, those thoughts and those feelings really drive us into this next category that we will call autopilot or rituals. So the autopilot is when I'm not paying attention to my thoughts and feelings, I haven't noticed the actual event, I just start getting into some usual scripted behavior. So I might actually just go on my phone and click into my first social media account, click into my second social media account, start just scrolling through. That might be a way that we start using our autopilot. Or it might be that we just go to our text box and we start texting our certain friend to tell them can you believe what just happened? The rituals start leading us into what we really want to avoid, which is like our negative behaviors. So if we have some difficulties in our life, whether it's addiction, overconsumption of food, underconsumption of food, over-exercise, lack of exercise, heated, explosive arguments, self-destructive behavior, promiscuity, all sorts of difficult things that we don't want to do. But because we've been in our autopilot, not paying attention, all of a sudden that behavior can explode. And what naturally follows after the actual behavior is the consequences of that behavior. Demoralization, crisis, the negative thoughts, the reinforcements of those negative beliefs that set us off in the beginning. And that's the cycle of these unmanageable events. So it's understanding a theory like this image or this step process to make better sense of, okay, well, like, what are those automatic behaviors that I'm actually doing that get me swept away into a risk of negative behavior? Now, as we're exploring this step process, there's many different places where people would say, or, well, maybe this is where I could stop it. You know, like most of the times, if we're trying to stop a negative behavior, if I'm not going to eat the liter of ice cream, it's the moment before I grab it out of the deep freeze that I'm like, do I really want to do this? However, I've been stewing in my automatic behavior for so long that there is just so much motivation and energy behind that negative behavior already. It's really hard to stop myself right before I act. The actual place that we want to start gaining some wisdom to talk ourselves through to a different option is right around the event. If we can notice these events more quickly, that's amazing. The second place where we actually can grow some strength is if we can notice those negative thought patterns or those big feelings. Where do those negative thoughts and beliefs live? In our body. And if I can notice my body more quickly, it's like, oh, my belly's getting tight here. What just happened? Oh, I'm saying some pretty terrible things to myself. I'm feeling awful. I want to just jump away from it and get into my ritual behavior. Where at that point I could actually make a choice. I'm going to slow myself down. I'm going to think about this and feel about this. Maybe I could go to my support person, journal, listen to a feel-good playlist, try to find a different exit towards some positive behavior. Okay, so this is just part one, and we'll go on with a few other focuses of questions and just understanding crisis and stress. All right, you guys, I hope you're taking care of yourselves. Bye. All right, you guys, so we are on part 2 in the Unmanageable Events, Stress, and Crisis series here in August 2020. Stress has been a big theme for our vlog since the pandemic just took a hold of all of us in this crisis that started up in March 2020. So if you want to look at more videos on stress, there's quite a bit on YouTube or on our website vlog that you can figure those out easier because they're archived a little bit cleaner than on Instagram and Facebook. But for today, I want to go through a little bit of a stress activity with you. So the first piece, and if you want to pause for a second, grab a piece of paper or maybe open up a little section in your phone or your computer where you could jot some notes. So the first question I want us to just take a moment to explore is, what are the top 3 stressors that you're facing just right now? So today, this day in August, what are the top 3 stressors? Are you thinking about kids going back to school? Are you thinking about masks, no masks, the numbers in Alberta? Maybe you're having some conflict at home or a difficult relationship, financial hardship, just really exploring what that stressor or those 3 stressors might be. Now, when you're exploring these stressors, the next question for yourself is, how do you feel about how you coped? How did you do? How are you doing with concerns about children going back to school? How are you doing about concerns about your relationships? How are you coping? What are you doing to take care of yourself with these difficulties that you may be facing? And then this is harder, so you might have to really take a pause, whether it's if you pause this video or if you take a pause afterwards. But if you could take a moment of meditation to reflect on a stressor that you handled well. You know, if you can take a moment and think about what was hard, what was really getting all of your stress level up, and you actually did a good job of it. Maybe it was recently, maybe it was a few weeks ago, months ago, maybe it was last year. Stress has been off the hook for most of us this year. But again, there are times when we actually push through and cope well with stress. So if you could paint that image in your mind, rather than just saying, oh, you know what, that time that I really had a ton of work to get done and I did it, that was a time I handled stress well. Tell yourself the story. See the visual detail. Watch the story in your mind of you overcoming that stress. And notice visually and embodied what it was like. What did you do? What is your story of overcoming stressors? And as you notice those triumphs over stress, how can you use that skill set inside of you to address the stresses that you're currently facing? Okay, so it's kind of a different way of looking at finding a coping tool, but the more we can visualize and really see those good coping tools, tell ourselves the stories of those times, and then try to tie them into our current stress. All right, you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.